Hello and welcome back to another episode of To Whom It May Concern. I'm your host Malak, here with my co-hosts Mariam, Khuwaila, and Inara.
Hey, Assalamu alaikum.
We decided to have a conversation on humanity. We're going to kind of talk about how responsible we are for one another. So, how responsible you are for helping somebody in need, or how responsible you are to go out of your way to help another individual.
So the other day, when I was in clinic, my attending and I were having a conversation. He mentioned the scenario. Okay, so let's say we're sitting by a pool, and there was this little kid there. And I guess his parents had left, and he went to the deep end of the pool, and you're the only one there, and you're just minding your own business, sitting down, doing your own thing. And this kid starts to drown, and he's splashing around asking for help. Do I have a responsibility to help this kid in need?
I mean, I personally would. If I saw a little kid drowning and he's asking for help, I would jump in there and save him.
Yeah, because if you have the ability to do so, I said the same thing. I'm like, yeah, you definitely should help this kid.
I think where the question really comes is not should you help the kid. It's if you don't help the kid and something happened to him, should you be faulted? Like, should it be your fault?
The lawyers coming
the
at
consequences. Well, because that's what I'm thinking. Like, obviously, everybody would want to help him, and you should help him, and that's like your, or at least my first response. But if you don't help him and he ends up drowning, should you feel responsible for that outcome?
Well, yeah, so you should feel responsible if you felt that you had to help.
And I feel like you would feel a little responsible at that point if you knew you were capable of making the difference and you didn't.
I told him that, yeah, I think you should help the kid if you're able to swim and save his life. And then he brought it back to like, okay, so now there is a kid somewhere in the world that is starving and you have enough money to help him or her. Do you feel the same responsibility? And then that's when like I kind of took a pause to think. Because he's like, technically, it's the same thing. You are capable of helping that kid.
Yeah, I think with whatever means you have, I think we should try our best to help individuals in general.
Those are not the same exact situations, though, at all. Because, one, you have other people in the situation that can also help this kid. But in the pool situation, you're the only one there. And it's an instant response, and it's automatic death versus slowly starving to death takes time.
And I think those
are two different situations.
I think the reason you probably also paused, Khuwaila, was because when you're thinking about a kid drowning, that kid is doing it right there in front of you. So it's a you're caught in the moment situation versus when you're donating money, let's say, to a child in Africa or to build a well, you never actually see what happened or what's going on.
So the fact that it's happening in your face and that you're aware of it.
Yeah.
That makes you responsible?
I think to the kid in the pool, you have a responsibility to save him. And I think to a certain extent, we have a responsibility to help others when we're capable of it.
Is it a responsibility or is it just a good action? Like, it's just a good deed?
Well, there's a difference. Should I just go that extra step versus if it's a responsibility, then it's like something that you have to do?
Well, that's why I was making that point earlier is when it's a responsibility, if you don't do it, you are faulted for not doing it. So that's why I was saying, like, would I go to jail or would I be in trouble if you don't help?
But I mean, it is.
And that's where the difference is.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be a responsibility as in, like, if you don't do it, there's a direct consequence. But it's more of a responsibility, like, your responsibility to humanity. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be you're fined if you don't do it or you're put in jail because you don't do it. It's more like
this is kind of like a higher level.
Yeah, this
like
isn't
it's
like
not legal. This
exactly.
is more like ethics, morals.
Like, I can't arrest you for not saving the kid from the pool, but you as an individual, as a person that allowed that to happen, that didn't feel like you had to do anything, that's where the discrepancy comes from. And I do think we have a responsibility because we even believe it Islamically. I mean, why else do we have to give zakat and sadaqah? So there is, to a certain point, we are responsible for others.
But sadaqah is not mandatory, zakat is, so you're responsible to a certain
to a certain extent. Exactly. I do believe to a certain extent we're responsible.
I guess the way people look at it is the way they have their overall outlook of life. If they feel people have that sort of responsibility to take care of others versus others have more of a selfish outlook of life and then everyone else like in between. So like that's what people will think, like the extent of their wanting to help versus it's my responsibility to help.
I think it also depends on the individual's culture. I feel like the West kind of emphasizes like individual responsibility and that independence and striving like alone on your own. And then compared to like a collectivist culture, which is more Eastern culture, those are more like about family, helping the community,
All of this
having a
together.
responsible not only to yourself but to everybody else around you.
Yeah, that's definitely 100% true. But even now with Western quote unquote culture, there's a lot of people pushing for more socialist policies or way of thinking. Like people are putting emphasis
Medicare for all.
everyone having health care, like free education, or making these larger corporations responsible for like the people they work for or the people that work for them and taking care of others and like being more environmentally friendly and things like that.
I feel like I usually have this conversation among friends where this conversation pertains to more of helping homeless people or
Yeah.
people on the street. So it's kind of the same idea where how responsible should we be to these people, or how responsible do we have to be? Like, do we have to create programs that go out of our way to help these people get back on their feet, or to help, maybe addicts on the street to get clean? Like, why should we feel responsible for these people when they might have put themselves in these situations?
Because it's not always the case. It's not always about
Them
putting themselves in that situation. Sometimes it's society that has failed them. And I think we would be ignorant to
put the blame completely on
them.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Not everybody is dealt the same hand in life, and sometimes they may have it rougher. And if we're able to, we should, create these programs, of course, to better the community, better the people, and obviously that'll.
So you're saying we should do that?
Yeah,
Is
we
it our
should help.
responsibility?
Okay, so here's where I'm conflicted. I do think it's our responsibility to help. I just think we can only do so much. I think, okay, you want us to donate. People should donate. People should put programs together, whatnot. Okay, but I think we can only go so far. And if people aren't willing to also give, like if the other person is also not willing to reciprocate the effort, then there's only so much I could do, and there's only so much you can expect me to care to do before it's no longer my problem.
Is it with the intention of you helping or your effort having some sort of effect? So like getting people off of the street. So
What
you're
do you
saying
mean?
like they have to meet you halfway or
No,
but-
because you can't make someone do something.
But like the point isn't them actually changing or
like just having it as an option, just providing that option.
exactly like
Oh,
do we have to do that
When
I
you're
mean-
helping, you're expecting an outcome.
yeah
Like it seems like
regardless of the outcome, do we have that responsibility to do it? Or like even I guess if you think about it, like what is a salary that we need to survive? So like what extent are we supposed to be donating or giving back? How do you balance that?
I mean, I think that's more of a personal thing because it differs based on everybody. What you think is a comfortable lifestyle may be different than what Inara thinks is a comfortable lifestyle, is different than what I think is a comfortable lifestyle. So I think it varies with an individual, but I'm also one of those people that, like, I'm also
there's a
kind of a firm believer where if you work so hard for something, then yes, you should give back, but I don't think you owe everything back.
So you just to be nice, but not that you have to. And there's a difference between
No, not to be nice. You do have a responsibility to give back.
So
You should. But I'm just saying there isn't, like, I shouldn't expect a certain amount from somebody just because they make a certain amount of money, let's say.
So now all these multi-billion-dollar corporations, Jeff Bezos, does he have a responsibility if he just like, I don't know, donates a few thousand here and there? Is that good enough?
No, that's like pocket change to him.
Exactly.
But I don't think you can say, is that good enough or not good enough? Like, I think it's in his own interest to give as much as he wants. And if he's giving, then we can't really say, like, well, that's not sufficient money. He worked and he got his money his way. But I don't think it's right for us to go and say, oh, well, if he's giving any less than $500,000, then he's not doing enough.
I think it depends on the person's role in society or like what you are. So for example, if you're a government entity that's literally for the people, then you have a social responsibility to create these programs and initiatives that help society versus if you're a private corporation or an entity, although everybody looks negatively at them if they don't, technically they don't have to give millions
exactly.
of dollars in charity. Like they didn't,
They don't
that's not
owe
their
it to
role in
anyone.
society.
Yeah, I agree.
I disagree. I think it's everyone's role in society, regardless of who you are as a human being. You need to have some sort of
Empathy.
I think you shouldn't harm people, but does that mean that you have to help them?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't
I
think
agree with
so.
Joela.
No, I think you should. I think you should help people because that's just who you are as a human. I think
Yeah.
regardless of your status, that's what you should be doing when you can. But I don't think we can tell people how much is enough, is my thing. So Jeff Bezos, for example, billions of dollars in his pocket. And let's say he only donates $1,000 a month. Let's just say that's what he does. I don't think we can go up to him and be like, no, you can afford to do 10,000 and you're not, so you're not a good person.
Yeah, I think we
I
could
don't
say
think
that.
you can do that. No, I don't
I
think
think
so.
we
I
could
don't
say
think
that.
we-
I think there's a level of there's a level of amount of money that you reach where it's common sense that how much you make is
It
known.
should correlate.
Yeah,
But
like,
who's to say
No,
how
but
much that
why-
is?
Why does he owe people his money though?
Like he earned it.
Why?
because
Tell me why.
it's never an individual project. It's always using the middle class to help you get there, and now
But
you're
he's,
gonna overlook
but he's
it.
paying his employees.
Yeah.
He's not cutting
And my
money
thing is,
from
the
them.
middle class is using
Minimum
his products.
wage.
They're buying his products. It's not like they're just giving him money just so he can be
But-
rich.
and then
They're
we're not-
buying products that they're using.
And we're not talking about him paying his employees. We're talking about giving to people that are less fortunate than him. So we're not saying how he runs his corporation or how he runs his business. We're saying him going out of his way to help those in need. So just straight donating money, let's say, or straight giving to a food pantry or
So
something.
here's my thing: if we don't make the 1% held responsible for the individuals that are homeless, who are individuals who are poor, I think that rate will constantly increase, where the wealthy people will just continue to grow, and the people who are middle class, like poor, will
Like there's
decrease.
no redistribution of wealth.
Right.
But I don't think
So, and here's a lot of things, people's circumstances and opportunities are different. So people who have made it so far, not for everybody, but there's some billionaires that, they were put into that wealth. So not everybody has the same opportunity. So I feel like for the people up there should be able to give back.
No one person has made it just by themselves. If you are not lucky, along with all the hard work and effort and smarts or whatever to
but
get there,
we're not saying cutting people off that helped you get there or not paying your employees. We're talking about solely giving to people that you have no contact with, like donating to homeless people. Like that's what we're talking about. We're not saying how much he pays his employees or their benefits or anything like that. We're just saying strictly going out of your way to help those that don't have as much as you. How responsible are you? But and then again, how about those people that have made it to those ranks that did become part of the 1%? Why do they owe it? Like, why do they owe their money back?
maybe because the way I see it is more of a religious perspective, where it's like
no, but
this-
even religiously, you're just supposed to give the zakah. Like that's what's fard, and everything else.
Yeah,
And
2.5 billion,
but-
2.5% of your $1 billion. That's
Like you should be giving your taxes what you owe proportionately. That's where I find the problem with is big corporations find loopholes in the system so that they don't give anything, period, to the government entities that are supposed to be helping society. That's where I have the
But
problem.
even the 2.5%, when you're talking about somebody that has $160 billion, for some people, they're like, 2.5% is pocket change for this guy. Why isn't he giving more? So who's to say what's enough and what's not enough?
Well, I think statistics and doing some math to figure out what's the best percentage where you are able to live the comfortable life that you want and be able to provide back. We have Senator Elizabeth Warren, who her whole campaign is about taxing the wealthy 2%. So as soon as anybody makes $50 million, she automatically wants to tax them 2%.
I just think it sounds like when we're having this type of conversation, or when people in generally are having this conversation, it's like wanting to punish people for being rich.
That's not punishing.
No, it sounds like if they
You're
don't
not
do if they
punishing.
don't do enough, they're not seen as good people. When they don't have to be held accountable for that.
It's not that they're getting punished.
It's
It's
like
that
the
they
whole-
have money. It's like getting punished if you're now going to be poor as well. No, the thing is you're still going to be living your lavish lifestyle, but you're helping a lot of these social programs that are happening.
It's like what the famous saying from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So money is power. So you do become responsible for giving back. And I'm not saying, there is a difference between having a comfortable lifestyle and having an extravagant lifestyle. And I'm not even talking about the billionaires now. I'm even talking about a lot of people in our community, or people from that
People
make
we know.
people that make as much money as we do, a little more, a little less, but around that.
We're blessed.
We are.
Yeah,
I
agree.
remember my-
I'm just talking about even people that make the sort of money that we are. Like, we even have a responsibility to give back to a certain extent.
And that's what and I believe 100% that you should be doing your part in helping people. And again, we do, as Muslims, we strongly believe that because we do zakat, and then we do the extra, the sadaqah, whenever we can. I'm just saying, if you don't give, okay, if you're, let's say, a really extravagant lifestyle. If I've worked to a point where I can afford to live an extravagant lifestyle, then I should be allowed to live an extravagant lifestyle. And let's say for some people, let's say Islamically, for those that are living extravagant lifestyles, they are paying their 2.5% zakat. Okay, they give what they're supposed to. For some people, that's not enough in itself. They're looking at you like you can afford to give a lot more, yet you don't. And for that reason, they hold them to a higher standard.
Yeah,
and they're
those
seen
people
as
too.
bad people.
I think you should give more. If you're making millions and living an extravagant lifestyle, I think you should be giving more than 2.5%. Just because, one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highly encourages sadaqah, and so you're pretty cheap and selfish if you're keeping that money to yourself.
That's where I have the issue. I have the issue with the penalizing part of. So it's not like, okay, you're neutral if you don't. It's you're bad if you don't. That's where I have the problem. You should, and I would.
As a human,
but
you should.
Yeah,
no,
okay.
but that's
Yeah,
not,
that
like,
questions your
Allah
character.
doesn't give you
How do you feel
that
comfortable?
responsibility.
How do you feel comfortable living in this like $1 billion home, knowing somebody is like
But that's-
suffering?
but
But
that's-
I did my minimum.
but
I'm
that's
sorry.
not-
That is
that's
But
very.
not
you
your
are
right
not
to
responsible
say.
for the entire universe.
I'm not saying
But
you give up
we
all
can-
your wealth and live. Yani.
But we can say the same thing to ourselves. Even if we're not living in a $1 billion home, we're living
We
in
can
a pretty
afford to give a lot more than we do.
So,
Yeah, and I think we
so
should.
then should we always never feel comfortable sleeping in a warm bed at night when there's so many homeless people in Chicago and December's coming up?
No, I think you should try your best in whatever means you have to give as much as you could.
But are we doing our best personally?
no.
That's
Because
I
again,
don't-
you're also, I understand that you should just, like, I get that it's better to have everyone live comfortably than some living in $1 billion homes and some not living at all. And okay, I agree to that again, but to a certain extent. Like, I get it, but some people work to get to where they are because they want to live that type of lifestyle. So if you're living a certain way and you're giving enough, I don't think
again,
Oh,
you should be
that's
held
very
accountable.
like that's
Individualistic
very
versus
individualistic thinking,
collectivistic.
and I feel like Islamically, it's like no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you that money. That money is not yours.
Definitely.
That money is not for others. So the Islamic perspective is more so like that is a blessing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, and that's something that you don't even own yourself. Like
But
that's, that's something that you're tested with. That's one. Two, what I want to say is that I'm currently taking a policy class, and here we are in my program. We're constantly, given a bunch of
social works in a policy class.
yeah, so we deal with policy too. Social workers deal with policy. So a lot of my professor would be like, all right, guys, so here's the do research on the healthcare plan. How are you going to get people to get covered? And like, how are you going to help the poor? Whatever. Or do you? So we constantly are doing the research on different policies, and then we're coming to realize that a lot of times, in order for people to get covered and live to get their needs met, it requires a tax on the wealthy. Like, that's how you distribute the wealth so that they could be taken care of. Like, a lot of times that's what it ends up going to.
It has to. How else? Where else are you going to get the money
So
from?
that's my concern. If we continue to say like, no, it's like individualistic, this person, has
What
earned
they're
it, and
saying-
they probably did. But then at the end of the day, what ends up happening is these people continue to get more money, and the people will continue to get poorer and poorer.
What they're saying is
but-
they're doing the basics.
No, what
But we're
I'm saying-
penalizing for not doing more.
The reason why our system isn't working is because we have a lot of corrupt rich people and billion-dollar corporations
That
that
aren't
are
paying even
not
taxes.
paying taxes, period. So it's not like, oh, they pay their taxes and we're getting the money that's supposed to be redistributed into society. That's not happening.
And then we
But
have-
if they did do that, then we would have a much better system.
And then we have corrupt government officials that are spending the money on the wrong things.
Exactly,
So the
so-
taxes that we do have, the billions that we do
They're
have,
going
are
to
going
war
towards
or
war.
Israel.
Exactly.
So if we did have a correct system in place, then it would work fine if everybody paid an equal amount on what they were supposed to. And where did, even Islamically speaking, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the responsibility, like the Khalifas were the ones that were in charge of making sure that everybody was taken care of. It wasn't like, if I'm not a Khalifa, then I don't have to check on everybody. You know what I'm saying?
Like if you're not leadership.
Yeah, you do check on your neighbors, obviously, and you make sure everybody's okay. But the leadership in charge is who's responsible for collecting all the zakat and redistributing it equally. So it's not on an individual level, it's the system that you're in. That's what I'm saying. So the government should be faulted for not taking care of everyone adequately enough versus people themselves.
But there's going to be corruption. So at this point, do we just accept the corruption and be like, it's not my fault, it's them?
No, that's why there's a lot of other organizations that aren't affiliated with the government because the government is corrupt.
And that's why we say you do your part to a certain extent, but then all the weight is not on one person's shoulders.
I mean, the difficult part is you need to have a balance between individualism and collectivism. It can't be all about everyone else, and it can't be all about yourself.
Yeah,
and
I
it's just
agree.
finding that balance that's the difficult part.
But you know what's crazy? Me and my brother were talking about it, and we're like, if Bill Gates gave $1 million to every single person in America, he wouldn't even feel it still. That's $300 million. It's not even one of his billion. Isn't that crazy?
That is insane.
Yeah, but it's like,
It's a lot of money.
I feel like
Not that he should or he has a responsibility to. I was just thinking, like, putting that into perspective.
Of
like,
how
if
much
he
money
gave-
he
But like,
Yeah,
look at
that's
the potential.
insane.
Like I guess it's just like having a greater purpose in life. Like the potential that these extremely wealthy people can do.
to impact the lives of others.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you
That's crazy.
if you read his
I'm still mind
if
blown.
you watch his interviews, and they have like a Netflix series on Bill Gates or whatever, they in his will, him and his wife, they're donating like 70% of everything
Yeah,
to
they're doing
charity.
a lot.
Like they do their part. It's just, I guess, how much should we expect them to do is where we differ.
Yeah. In one of my management classes, we were talking about how, like, there was an interview between the CEO of Dick's Sporting Goods and Allstate. And they were just saying how, like, because this is a corporate social responsibility class, how to be more socially responsible in, like, the corporate sector. So these two people were having, I guess they are for the most part, like, socially responsible, quote unquote, where they're, like, more, I guess Dick's Sporting Goods used to have, like they used to sell guns, and now they're being more restrictive because they're thinking like of all the people that are with the school shootings and like gun violence and stuff. So they're being like, they're trying
More
to
cautious.
Exactly. So they were just saying how, like, when it comes to these meetings that they're having, they usually run numbers on like income and how much they're making, their losses, what they're spending on. But he's like, we never quantify or ever talk about job creation and like valuable jobs that they're creating. So I feel like that would be a more long-term solution rather than just donating. And like, I do feel like these people that do head these corporations are responsible for doing stuff like that.
That reminds me of an article that I was reading about Jewel Pods having to stop selling their most popular flavored brand. I think it was the Mint or something, because of the teenage epidemic in buying Jewel Pods. So do you think that they had to do that?
Yes.
Why do they have a responsibility to stop teenagers from smoking their product versus like parents watching their teenagers and not having them smoke their products, or the schools? Or so why does it fall back on the corporation should be faulted?
One thing that was going out against them was the way that they marketed. It was aiming towards
Like the cotton candy and stuff.
yeah, it was geared towards teenagers. So that's one thing.
So why couldn't they just change their marketing?
But two, my problem is I have a problem with all things that are bad for us in society.
But that's true. Like drinking soda or eating candy, like that's
But
technically not good for
You're
you.
trying to take away though all the responsibility off an individual for saying like you should not buy the product if you think the product isn't good for you.
Why should
So
I not sell it?
So the people that invented or like that created came up with tobacco and making cigarettes and alcohol and that stuff. So they're not at fault. They're just doing their whatever they want to do to make money. It's not their fault. It's our fault for buying it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nobody's
'Cause if
holding
we
a gun
didn't
to your head to
yeah.
buy the
If
product.
we didn't buy the product, they wouldn't keep producing it,
And they wouldn't be
making
billion-dollar industries if we weren't the ones that were continuously buying.
So let's say in 10 years now, when all of the other businesses are closed and it's just Amazon that's the monopoly dominating everything. Now, let's say Jeff Bezos or whoever's in charge of Amazon, let's say they start doing terrible things, like mistreating their employees or
Not paying enough or something.
yeah, exactly. Whose fault is it? Is it their fault or our fault
No,
for creating
that's
that
not
monster?
the same at all. Because that's like your responsibility to your employers versus your responsibility to stop selling a product because it's bad for society.
no, but Hueda's saying like we continuously invested in Amazon and now they have monopolized, so it's our fault for doing this.
No, I kind of see.
Everyone's fault.
I see what Huela is saying, but I kind of agree with Mariam. I think that's a little different because that's more like corporations amongst each other. That's not necessarily me stopping to sell something just because it's affecting your health.
There's a
doing
two-sided
evil
coin.
things.
No, but it's like it's a two-sided. Jewel didn't just stop selling their most popular brand because they felt an ethical responsibility. No, they probably did it because they seen that people were upset at them and angry, so they were losing more money, and then they stopped selling it. So my point is, corporations do everything based off of money and society's opinion of them. So
And
if
is that okay? In your opinion, is that okay? Corporations should only care about money.
Well, it's a business. That's what they're doing.
No, I disagree.
No, you shouldn't harm society. You shouldn't harm society. But also, society shouldn't allow itself to be harmed.
But
You can't
is
just-
it selling tobacco or selling alcohol or selling things that are harming society?
You can say that about everything, though.
So then what is
So-
your definition of harming
No,
society?
that's what I'm saying. You could, if you want to go to the extent where, well, you're selling candy, which is high in sugar, which causes people to have diabetes, which harms society. Like, you can do that about every single corporation. You can go back and say,
Everything is
That-
okay in moderation.
yeah, no, not alcohol, not
Smoking
No,
in
but I'm just
moderation.
But what I'm
Everything
saying is, like,
Everything in moderation is okay. Yeah, there are some things that you shouldn't do at all. But again, they shouldn't be held responsible to making sure that you don't exceed what you should be doing.
people need
Like,
to
you
be
have a
also have
brain.
social accountability.
Why? And just because these people came up with the product doesn't mean that it's suddenly on their shoulders how people use it or not use it. It's the same thing with that whole gun argument or like, you know, other weapons. How do people use it? It's not the weapon that's the bad thing. It's how you use the weapon that causes it to be a
but
bad
is
thing.
providing that weapon, doesn't that make you at fault?
No, because how many positive things came out of them also?
What positive things come out of having guns on you?
Safety. I'm just
okay,
saying
that's-
there are
that's not that.
I wouldn't use
Okay,
guns
but
as the example, but
I'm just saying that was just an example, but I'm just saying in general, it's not necessarily the tool, it's how people are using it that causes it to become
Like, it's not the
detrimental.
gun's fault. It's the
Yeah,
person
it's
behind
pulling
gun.
the trigger.
But we're not talking about the object. We're talking about the people providing that object.
So I guess it's also going back to like how you regulate it. So like with the gun policies, how do you make sure that it doesn't get in the hands of like the wrong people? Like if you're doing more background checks, you're making sure they reach a certain age, you do a mental health assessment, whatever the case may
People are
be.
gonna have guns.
That's another question.
for another time.
But see, same thing with like smoking. The age went up to 21 years old, and
Corporations only make those changes, like changing the age limit, because society,
Pressured them.
is pressuring them.
yeah, they protest
So-
against it.
So who's giving them the power and who's taking it away is us. It's not the corporations in themselves.
So they shouldn't be doing that themselves. It should only be done if we pressure them to do so.
So you think corporations shouldn't have like an ethical, moral standard
No,
to them?
they should. They should not harm, but also
But if
They
their
are.
product
if
is
their
based
product,
off harm,
if their product is based off harm, then it's us who's harming ourselves by buying it.
But then that's removing ethicals and morals to
No,
corporations.
no. I think where their ethical duties are is like they shouldn't be making toxic waste and putting it into our environment, and they shouldn't be able to like have massive amounts of pollution. But in terms of product itself, companies make products because people want these products and people buy these products, and regulating it is the government's responsibility. People should be smart enough not to buy products that harm them, and if they aren't,
That's your
that's
fault.
their problem. That's
But where
my
do
fault.
when do we draw the line? Like when are we like, okay, this is totally wrong?
I think people need to stop thinking of corporations and the people buying them as two separate systems when they're all one. So we give to them, they give back to us. It's one continuous cycle. So if one of the but we, the consumers, have the greater power. So corporations won't keep doing, even if they are doing something unethical, if we tell them, hey, we're not going to buy your product anymore because you're doing something unethical, then they will change.
maybe it depends. Let's say Walmart is the cheaper option, so people that don't have the luxury of choosing more expensive options will always go to Walmart. So then the consumers don't have more power in that sense.
But you still don't have to buy the product that's detrimental to you regardless.
Oh, I'm not talking about detrimental. I'm just talking about in general with corporations.
But we're talking about the use of products that are detrimental to society.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
talking.
Like, that's the whole point. If you don't purchase it, nobody's gonna make it. I'm not just gonna make things like Mariam saying earlier to put in a warehouse if nobody's purchasing it.
A great example of people controlling the money that causes change is BDS, the Boycott, Divest, and Sanction movement. Why does that work so effectively is because corporations or government entities listen to money because money talks. So if you refuse to spend your money in that place, they will make an active change in the way that they organize and the way that they structure and the products that they sell.
But that's true. We do have the power to do that. I just still find people that are supporting these terrible entities like people that are supporting Israel, even though with all the stuff that they're doing to the Palestinians, like I still find them at fault for that. You know what I mean? So yes, we do have the capacity to make change because of the money. But what I'm sort of bringing up is not just creating change, but in that we in general have a responsibility for each other. Tying it back to like the original conversation.
I agree with what you're saying, Joela. I understand where you guys are coming from in the sense that it's not a free for all and it's not every man for himself. Like, we shouldn't have that type of mindset where as long as I'm surviving and I'm doing okay, then I don't care what's happening to everybody else. And that's completely understandable. I just think the way a lot of people would like to see things is very naive and very ideal. Like, you'll never have no corruption. You'll never have money loss.
And I'm not, but that's the thing. I'm not talking about that. There will, of course, be this corruption.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is it then the responsibility of us good folks to
Step
compensate for that. That's what I'm saying.
I think we can, but to a certain extent. Like, I think it's asking a lot of people to kind of just be like, okay, well, this isn't working. The people that we're supposed to be trusting isn't working. The people that we're still giving millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to, which are government officials or whatever, and wherever they're splurging the money, it's like, it's hard because now you're asking people, okay, do what you're supposed to do, what you have to do, which is like give your money or your taxes or whatever. And then you have to also compensate for what they're not doing when they're supposed to be doing it. Like, I think it's naive and it's ideal to think that people are going to be willing to do both because it's hard. Like, sometimes you're physically at a capacity where you also can't just do both. And you're more like, okay, well, what's good for me and my family? You know, you're always going to prioritize yourself and your family over everybody else. That's just a given. So that was the whole argument with why do we expect people that have millions of dollars to give so much more? You know, I don't think we're Republicans.
No.
But I'm just saying, it is.
No, I think that everyone does have responsibility, and it's just up to you to find that balance between taking care of yourself and your family and then also taking care of others.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's going to be a struggle, but like everything else in life, it's a struggle. Balancing between like your work and your life, balancing between family and friends. Like, everything is a balance. Another important thing to keep in mind is what you're doing. So even if it's not donating money, some other things that you can donate, so like such as time, which is volunteering, or if you are a business owner, you're starting like you can create jobs, so that instead of giving people money, you're giving people the opportunity to make money. So there's different things in being creative to overall help a society, not just donating money. So just to have that in mind, where it's like you're not just one way. There isn't just one way to give back.
Yeah, there's a lot of local organizations, even like Zakat Foundation, when they make kits for the poor, or, you know, blankets, they sew blankets for poor people. Muslim Women's Alliance, like, there are so many. I know Orland Masjid is always doing things. Different masajid are always doing things where you can, like you said, you can dedicate your time if you don't have the money to do it. And it's always just like an hour and a half. I think that was a great point to mention, because we do always think that if you're not giving money, you're not doing anything. And I think it's really important that when we have conversations like this, like, even though in our opinions and what we're saying that, yeah, you shouldn't, like, we don't expect people with a lot of money to donate billions of dollars or millions of dollars, but I think it's so important to kind of recognize your own feelings when it comes to these topics, because I think even though we don't believe that people should be held responsible to donate millions of dollars, the fact that you still believe that people should be giving, or the fact that you're still affected by the number of homeless people that are on the streets or whatever, I think that, like that's you
that
recognizing
empathy.
your humanity. Yeah, yes. I think if you're really at a detriment when that stuff doesn't really affect you as much anymore. So I think it's really important that although you may not always agree with how much you have to give or the amount that you give, the fact that you have to recognize that you should be doing something in some way is you just being a upright individual in society and giving back to humanity. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in and listening to this week's episode of To Whom It May Concern. Please continue to subscribe, like, and follow us on social media. We appreciate and love the support we've been receiving so far. If you don't already follow us, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Modern Skepts. And please continue to tune in every week on Tuesday mornings. If you have any ideas you'd like us to discuss, please email us at modernskeptics@gmail.com. Sincerely, The Modern Skeptics. P.S. Being human is a given. but keeping our humanity is a choice.